Ex-cult members, what is your story? A friend asked me to come with her to New Mexico to reunite with her family she hadn't seen in about a decade that were all still part of the cult she got out of, just as support. As far as I gathered, her mom was in too deep to get out, but recognized that my friend was in physical danger from her stepdad, who was a pretty high-ranking member of the cult. So she sent my friend, then 11 or 12, to a boarding school as far away as possible, and my friend just never went back. Weirdest part was going to family dinners with them. Everyone was so normal, but they talk about going to practice, which was what they called the transcendental chanting sessions. They wouldn't eat certain things because the leader told them not to. We drank only goat's milk, farmed by their neighbor. While there, they gave him a huge portion of their income to this guy be part of the group. Was kind of surreal how normal they seemed until you got to know them a little better. Was born into the Unification Church, aka Moonies. My dad was abusive towards my mom. Church members told my mom to pray and that she would sin if she left him. Family didn't want to have anything to do with her due to the cult. In the end she spent her 20s on missionary work and fundraising/moonlighting, created 2 children with a crazy person and then ended up as a single mom with no resources. After some time she forced us to rejoin with the cult. Basically I learned that my sense in life was to create children with a designated partner by my parents or the messiah/leader of the cult, and that I was worthless if I would have romantic, sexual relations with other people before marriage or that were not in the cult. Not to mention that mental illness and homosexuality were thought to be diseases caused by demons, evil ancestors clinging to the living. My mom still believes in some of their ideologies, but is not involved anymore. The whole thing is less strict now, but I would still never step a foot in one of their buildings anymore. Ex-Scientologist. My story is nowhere near as bad as a lot of what you hear about Scientology, as I didn't get very deep into it. I only really dealt with the Dianetics portion of Hubbard's fiction. I was a trained Dianetics auditor at 15 or 16, which can probably tell you all you need to know about how ridiculous the whole thing is. When I was 14 I was talked into joining what they call Sea Org, which would have involved moving to their headquarters in Clearwater. The Sea Org is made up of the most fanatical members of the church. They have a contract that you sign when you join that is quite literally for 1 billion years. Once you join them you aren't allowed to have premarital sex, work absurd hours, if I remember correctly it's upwards on 9,100 hours a week, live in communal housing, and even though you are allowed to marry you have to give up your membership if you want to have kids, giving up all of the benefits of being part of the organization. I signed the contract not thinking that the 1 billion years thing was actually legitimate, not knowing that joining meant I would no longer be able to see my family unless they could afford to come to see me or if I was lucky enough to get stationed back in my home church. I was 14 years old and I was lied to and talked into joining this elite and exclusive organization with honeyed words from an adult who I liked and trusted. Thankfully I was able to get that undone, but that was the beginning of the end for me with Scientology. I started to doubt everything about the church but stayed with it because my mother was and still is part of it. Eventually I was just completely done with everything to do with Scientology and decided to get out. Thankfully, I didn't have any trouble leaving the church like you hear in all the horror stories. That may be due in part to the fact that our church was quite small and that my mother was one of the higher placed church staff members there. All I had to do was sign a contract saying that I would never speak ill of the church or Scientology and not to lie about the church's beliefs or teachings. I'm still close with my mother but she knows not to bring up Scientology with me, and I know I'll never convince her to leave. I have had no contact with anyone else involved with the church in close to 10 years. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. Yes, absolutely a cult. I wasn't allowed to celebrate any holidays. As a child, when they would have holiday parties at school, I was pulled out of class to sit in the library. Saying the pledge was forbidden, as was standing for the national anthem. I was not allowed to play on any sports team, or join any after-school clubs. Any contact with non-witness kids was extremely limited. because they all are a bad influence. I wasn't allowed to read Harry Potter books or watch the movies. I had to wear a dress or skirt to services, but they had to be extremely modest. I wasn't allowed to watch anything rated R or play most video games, because they portrayed violence. I was not allowed to listen to rap or anything that sounded remotely like rap. I was not allowed to date until I was at least 18, and even then it had to be chaperoned at all times, and it had to be within the religion. Dating and marrying someone who was not a witness was strictly forbidden. If you disobeyed any rules you would be punished by being disfellowshipped, and no one in the religion is ever allowed to speak to you again, including your own family. I downloaded Bumble, started dating a normal dude, moved in with him 2 months later, and now we're engaged and planning our wedding. Worked for the Cobra group for many years. They are a pyramid scheme. The salesmen earn less than minimum wage and work 16+ hours per day. The senior management prey upon their workers. And a lot of them abused drugs, cocaine in the 90s as I recall. Given that a class action has been issued in 2016 which appears to be ongoing, not much has changed. F.U. Chris Niergos. It was torture. My dad got me into it. He was always so full of hope when he thought good things were going to happen, always lying to himself about how things are going to turn around. It drove me crazy. One day I said F it, I am no longer a Knicks fan.
Yeah, they had us the first half, I'm not gonna lie. They had us. We weren't defeated, but they had us.
I used to be a part of a cult. It was called Suzuki, not actual name. I was born into it. We lived in a state in its rural part far away from anyone else. The leader was Jacob Suzuki, not actual name. We worshipped him as our deity. He promised eternal happiness for all those who followed him. When I turned 18, my family got me engaged with a girl. We both wanted to leave, so we eloped together to South Dakota. We are married, have 3 kids and a big house. Last I heard, Suzuki was arrested for money laundering. I was part of this non-denominational church when I was in high school. I didn't have a choice in the matter, so I went with my parents 3-4 times every week. Wednesday service, Saturday rehearsal and service, and the 2 services on Sunday. The church was all about money. The 10% tithe was never enough and always asked that you donate more. They preached the more you donate the more God would bless you. Like blessings were just a transaction. My parents were very involved in the church, and once we left, they claimed to have given $10,000 to the church over the course of 4 years. We only left when my parents finally realized they were being used. The church banished us and we lost a lot of people we thought were our friends and my long-term boyfriend at the time. I haven't set foot in another Christian church since. Jehovah's Witness. Mom baptized when I was 4, forced out of mini-mite hockey at 6, molested at 8, suicide attempt at 13, pressured into baptism at 15, married to another JW at 26, way too old for a JW, did it only because I lacked intimacy and was lonely. 3 kids later I realize it's a cult. Marriage ended, abandoned by mother, and fired from my job in a 5-week span. That was 2 years ago. Ex has the kids. I have nothing and contemplate suicide daily. Unemployed college student with severe PTSD and no income source. There's my story. Not me, but I met a woman once who told me her cult story. I don't remember which cult it was, but they were living in the Midwest, and one day her dad came home and told the family he joined the cult and they would be moving the next day. So the next morning at 9 a.m., they pulled their truck out of the driveway and moved to California. There were numerous brainwashing initiation sessions where they'd have to sit for hours watching videos without food or drink or bathroom breaks. She said the only thing that kept her sane during that time was singing songs one of her friends from before had taught her. At age 12, she watched her dad beat her twin sister to death. At age 16, they sent her to Germany to recruit people, which, not surprisingly, she wasn't very good at. She loved Germany because she got to explore the beauty there and didn't have much supervision. After a while, though, they brought her back because she wasn't recruiting enough people. 2 weeks before her 18th birthday, She ran away from home and basically lived in the desert of California until her birthday when she was finally free. She's made a good life for herself now. I know there's even more to her story that would be even more horrifying to hear, but honestly the most amazing thing was to see how normal she turned out. Cults are evil and we don't even realize how much shit goes on inside. Well, you have more fun as a follower.
But you make more money as a leader.
Thank you for watching. Stay home, stay safe, subscribe for more.